Hi, this is Mark Soden, and I'm here with Eric Potter, and we are discussing an upcoming show at the Beatnik Lounge on October 4th, 2024. And Eric, please introduce yourself.
Well, I don't mind if I do. I am Eric Potter, all the way from Los Angeles, California, and I'm a musician and a sound engineer. And I have a real fascination with um, space, atmosphere, environment, experiencing a sense of space. I think that's why I like to go out uh, to the Joshua Tree and Wonder Valley areas and Mojave and explore. But I also like to record out there because the environments are interesting. And sometimes I'm recording the environments themselves, and sometimes I'm creating sound and music in those environments and sort of dialoguing with them, perhaps. But most of the time, I'm here at home in LA in Echo Park. I have a little music studio that I gather with friends and mates and do the occasional professional gigs there. And I like to play out a lot, different places, uh, quite a lot in the experimental and pseudo noise. I'm not a full on noise artist, but I like crossing over into the noise communities, which are really vibrant and fascinating around here. But I do love harmony and uh, even melody and hooks and stuff too.
Excellent. Well, let's talk a little bit about October 4th. What sort of thing are you going to be presenting that night?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting because I have no idea. I've been doing a fairly well varied thing, but I can give a pretty good indication. Uh, it will be it'll be completely improvised, but the instrumentation will probably be uh, electric guitar in some sort of open tuning of my own uh, construction. I might have a standard tuning guitar as well, and I like to. It's not guitar. It doesn't necessarily sound like guitar music the way it comes out, though. So, as you might imagine, a lot of pedals and looping and processing. It's very ambient, textural. It can get noisy, but it's not a harsh noise. It's rather harmonic, um, and I will probably have a little keyboard of some sort. More the last year, I've been playing with Mellotron and some classic piano type stuff. I got a Wurlitzer electric piano, but that thing's too heavy to haul out. I think that's the one piece of gear that just stays put. It's like a late '60s Wurlitzer electric piano. So I might bring a little mini keyboard version of that. I'm not a fan of digital sounds or manipulation, especially. But this would be a little Yamaha keyboard that imitates electric piano and does a pretty good job of it. Um, rather analog in general, tube amps, uh, analog pedals, and objects on the guitar. So will sometimes strum or pluck the strings, but more often I might um, take to them with a paintbrush or a jeweler's file or something to create a more textural sound and not so much a plucky sound.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Well, let's take just a moment and kind of go way back. And what do you feel started you down the road with sound to get you to where you are today?
Yeah, good question, right? It really goes really far back. Somebody asked me yesterday when I told them about some of what I do, and like, did you go to school to study music or sound? And I was unaware that you could do that, and so because I just started noticing sound and doing things very early on, and I remember my dad won some kind of contest, and they gave him a portable cassette recorder, which at the time in the late 60s, I was just a little kid. Um, it was one of the first cassette recorders ever. And I marveled at it. He's like, "Yeah, look, you record and you can play back." And I had witnessed reel to reel tape as a kid, and but that was so big and clunky for us to have in the house. We didn't have, but so this was the first recorder that showed up in our house, this cassette recorder, and I took to it right away. And I ended up recording not singing or conversations, or I recorded, the faucet, or um, I used to pick up the telephone, the landline telephone, and dial. I would record the dial tone first off.
Hmm.
Then I would dial some numbers and I would just record whatever happened. Sometimes I would find these uh, funny little wrong numbers that had recorded messages, or I would find some new kind of busy signal that I hadn't heard before. I go, "Oh, that's interesting." So I would record that for 30 seconds. And so I guess I was just fascinated with even with sound effects uh, as a 6 year old, And luckily, I just discovered it at home with the ordinary objects.
Well, in the world of film, I think that the Foley arts are hugely overlooked as a major part of what puts you as the audience in that place. That's a big part of the experience is like the sound creating the environment that the action is happening in.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who it was interviewed in the 70s or 80s, a film director. It might have been Coppola. I'll have to find out for sure. And the interviewer asked him, "Well, what do you think about sound? Sound is 50% of the picture." And this film director, uh, world renowned, respected film director, said, "No, sound is about 90% of the picture." Yeah, and he's the director. He's the director of the visual action, uh, and I think that's kind of true because the possibilities, especially in the cinema with surround sound, or now at home you have surround sound. Um, you can create environments and atmospheres that really nail the vibe that of a story or a scene that you want to tell. And you can also help create things that just don't exist, and make them believable, or just make them imaginable uh, through sound. And you can do it uh, without having to spend a whole lot of money necessarily, or and you can do it with your imagination, and get very creative and fun.
I agree. So you've had a storied past, and I read a little bit of the information on your website about some of the adventures you've had making various soundtrack contributions over the years. Is there any one thing that would you'd care to share with us that stood out from your?
Yeah, I'll say I one of the first things I ever did, one of the first films that I worked on, strictly recording new sounds for the project, amazingly enough, was Edward Scissorhands. And we thought, "Oh, this is going to be a fun movie." We didn't know what a creative landmark it would turn out to be, but we sure had a lot of fun brainstorming and how to make those scissors. And for his hands, the props they had were really great, but they actually didn't sound that good themselves on the set. So the team I was working with, Richard Anderson was the supervising sound editor and sort of what now you would call a sound designer, and John Pospisil was also the kind of the effects sound designer, and David Stone. They've all won Oscars for their sound work and creativity. And I was just a staff librarian at the time. I had started out at this company helping organize their sound recordings. They had this fascinating library of original recordings. And that's how I learned about how unusual sounds could be professionally recorded. I had to listen to these tapes of recordings they had done in the past, catalog them, and make them available for future use. And so they were going bouncing around about what they needed for the scissors, and of course they recorded a lot of actual scissors, blades, scraping, hinges, and stuff. And they were a bit stuck as to what to do when Edward's hands were just kind of idling and not moving. And you might see the occasional blade droop down a little bit or something. And so I had an idea. I just went ahead and did it. Um, I I grabbed the Nagra reel-to-reel recorder and two Sheps microphones, and they always had that at the ready, at the shop there. And I grabbed a couple of the Luxor lamps from the sound editor's editing benches, and they have those hinged arms with a lamp on it, and they have springs on them. And I just sort of flexed them back and forth, and the little springs would go dung, dung, make this gentle little springy suspension sound. And it turned out to be just right for those moments where the blades were sort of hanging suspended. And uh, I think it's very subtle, but I think it works out great because it's an actual sound that we've all probably heard. If you've ever been in an office in the 70s and 80s and 90s, those lamps are still around today. And you've probably heard that sound without ever thinking about what it actually is. And when you hear it with Edward's hands, it's kind of believable because you've heard that sound before, and you don't know that it's a lamp, but it makes sense that it's something real, and it maybe helps you believe that Edward really has scissors for hands. And that's one I was really happy with, and it's one of the first things I did way back when in the late '80s, I guess it was.
Wow, that's a great story.
It's fun.
Yeah,
Well,
they may not have that brand of lamp, but I have a mic arm holding this microphone up,
yes,
and it has the springs on it like the old
yes,
lamps do. So yeah,
yeah.
they're still around.
Hopefully, those are quieter than the ones that I used, which I sought out the clunkiest sounding lamps in the building,
I
and
remember
or
those as being kind of noisy. I mean, you'd move them and they would make an array of noises, a squeak at the elbow, and there are four springs on this thing, so I assume there were four on every lamp,
yeah,
and all the springs would go sympathetically.
yes,
Yeah, yeah, that was
yeah. It was like a tambora lamp or something. uh,
yeah, they were ubiquitous. They were a dorm staple.
yes,
Yeah, wow, great
and
story.
it's funny that can come back to mind. It can. I think if you're a musician, sound oriented person, you can come up with that stuff. But I heard that sound, and it probably in my head I heard it, and it probably took me 2 days to remember what it was. Like, oh yeah, I want to get that sound. I'm like, but what is that from? I can hear that springy. It's like it's not a spring reverb. Maybe you could use a reverb tank disconnected and do it with that, or a slinky. I was like, was it a
Yeah.
slinky? I'm like, not, but it wasn't a slinky. I played with a slinky and came up with something else for another thing. And then it's like, yeah, it's kind of like the slinky. And finally, I just walked into somebody's edit room and I saw the Luxor lamp. Like, oh, can I borrow that? And sure enough, you know, they don't get paid for the time it takes to figure that out, though. That's
Yeah,
on my
well,
time.
all great ideas require some gestation, you know.
Yeah, we could figure out how to get paid for that time. That would be amazing.
It would be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add to this interview? You come out to Joshua Tree before? It sounds like
Yeah. I was married at the Joshua Tree Inn. I hang out in the park. I have friends who live in the area. My couple of my bands have played at Pappy's, and what was the other place? Oh, when Desert Days. Remember when Desert Days was in
yeah,
Joshua Tree? I played the one. In fact, this coming up will be my first solo show in a long time. I used to do it fairly regularly, and I played one of the Desert Days out there at the metaphysics compound.
right.
Yeah.
The retreat center. Yeah.
Yeah. And um so and I've been coming out to the park since the 80s, maybe since it was designated, or like,
It's still a monument.
yeah, or it had just become a monument, maybe, or something. And I guess maybe the U2 Joshua Tree album got me thinking, like, well, I should check that place out. And I'm like, oh, it's just east of LA. And so I moved to LA in '87, and that very year I went out to check out Joshua Tree, and then just kept going back. And then I love the Palms. I don't know how long ago, I was just throttling down Amboy Road, and out of the corner of my eye, this a neon beer sign like flashlight. Wait, is that a tavern? Is that a like you were just starting to get the feeling that there was no civilization left, And then this flash of neon, and I spun the car around. I'm like, wow, it's a little tavern, and that was probably in like 2004 or something. Um,
Yeah.
and uh, and one time I was driving back from Tucson. I'm gonna guess around 2005, 2006, and it was midnight. And I decided, hey, I'll see if the Palms is open. I'll swing up, from Cottonwood or Rice, and sure enough, not only was the Palms open, but the Wonder Valley Experimental Music Festival was in full swing. And so I hung out till 4 a.m. and
Oh, I was
marveled.
there at 3 a.m. I went on. Yeah,
Yeah, yes,
that
yeah,
was a long night.
that was yeah. And I dreamed that, oh man, I got to come back here and like play atmospheric music under the stars. And so I this year I finally I'm kind of remiss at self promotion and finding uh, the submission schedules for festivals and things like that. But it seems like your festival will start taking submissions pretty soon.
Right. Traditionally, it's the day after Christmas is the
Yeah.
call goes out. I am no longer involved in the promotion of the
Yeah,
live show. I'm doing the virtual side of that. So I'm collecting videos from all over the world for the virtual show for Wonder Valley
nice.
Experimental.
Yeah,
But yeah, look for it. It's going to be on, YouTube. And I think they're going to have something on. Well, they go to the usual places you would look for announcements of
yeah.
that kind.
I found the Wonder Valley group, Wonder Valley Experimental Group on Facebook, and it seems like notifications will come out through that if you
Yes,
follow along closely
yes.
enough. And so yeah, looking forward. I want to try to do that in the spring, and then oh, it's interesting that you're doing the videos. Perhaps I have a band that's very uh, atmospheric and experimental and a little bit noisy called Cat Museum.
Huh.
And we create our own. Two of our guys are good at animation and editing. So they create these 20-minute animations of found cat footage from films and surreal sources, not like YouTube cat videos or TikToks, but more like vintage film or weird documentaries. And they kind of remix all of that cat footage into a surreal story. And then we're a four-piece, uh, mostly electronic and guitar oriented band that composes to those animations at the shows. And so maybe we could make a video for that. There's some good footage of us. It's a visual treat, Cat Museum, and sonically as well. It's kind of like if it's like a cross between Kraftwerk and the Residents, maybe.
Wow. Two
So
favorites. That's awesome.
yeah,
All right.
and
Well, let's
yeah,
I think we've covered some good ground here. Anything you'd
great.
like to add at the end of this interview?
Um, yeah, let's see. I'm excited to. This was a great motivation for me to do a solo set because in the last couple of years I've been doing a lot of collaboration, group work, and it's very. I feel very accountable to my bandmates and collaborators to come up with something. But then when I realized you had been doing shows at the Beatnik in Joshua Tree, and I thought, wow, I'd like to do that just to be there. And so it's a fun goal to that I'll come out and give me a structure to do some of the things that I can do probably more quietly and more dynamically interesting than I can in an ensemble. So I'm kind of looking forward to the super quiet moments, and I'm sure they will be punctuated by rather dynamic and bold moments. But I guess I'm looking forward to developing some new subtleties and new textures before heading out and see how they go.
That sounds great, Eric. I can't wait to see your show, and that'll be at the Beatnik Lounge October 4th, 2024. Thank you so much for meeting with me today, and have a great afternoon.
All right. Thanks, Mark. And we'll see you, everyone. Come on out, and I'll come and see you guys too.
Okay.